Have you ever felt like you are constantly on a stage inside your own home? That your every step, every breath, and random gesture are being evaluated by an invisible spectator? I used to chalk it up to pre-wedding jitters, the quirky whims of my perfect husband, and my own excessive anxiety. I willingly played by the rules of a game that felt like an expression of a fierce, sophisticated love. But on a stifling July Tuesday, when the internet in our high-tech mansion suddenly went down, I looked into the one place I was strictly forbidden from ever going near. What I discovered behind a false panel in my own walk-in wardrobe didn't just shatter my marriage in a single second. It made me realize that the last 4 years of my life had been a meticulously directed, filthy, and incredibly expensive spectacle. Listen to this story until the end, because the identity of the person sitting in that audience and the price my husband paid for this endless live stream will make you want to check every single smoke detector in your own bedroom. My name is Catherine. I am 28 years old, and until recently, I was absolutely, unconditionally certain that I had won the ultimate lottery in life. My husband's name is Marcus. He is 32, a brilliant, sought-after architect with impeccable aesthetic taste, flawless manners, and the looks of a man straight off the cover of a luxury magazine. We met 5 years ago at a private charity contemporary art auction, where a close friend of mine practically dragged me by force. Me, a humble freelance graphic designer. Marcus singled me out from the crowd instantly. Amidst the pretentious women dripping in diamonds and the arrogant businessmen, my naturalness and, perhaps, a bit of awkwardness seemed like a breath of fresh air to him. He approached me, made a subtle, clever compliment about my work. I was just discussing a catalog layout with a colleague, and claimed my undivided attention for the rest of the evening. He knew how to court a woman the way men do in old Hollywood movies. Massive bouquets of my favorite white peonies for no reason at all, elegant notes left on my car's windshield, and an immediate intuition for my every unexpressed desire. I fell hopelessly in love. I felt like I had met my soulmate, the man of my life, who wrapped me in a cocoon of absolute safety and warmth. A year after we met, we got married. It was a stunning, very intimate, yet incredibly stylish ceremony at a lakeside villa. Marcus practically beamed with pride as he introduced me to his colleagues and friends, and I felt like the happiest woman on the planet. Shortly after our honeymoon, my husband announced that he was tired of the cramped confines of a city penthouse and dreamed of building a real family ark for us, a house that would be the physical embodiment of our love and his architectural genius. He personally found the perfect, secluded plot of land in a prestigious suburb. The plot was surrounded by ancient pine trees, creating a sense of total isolation from the outside world, even though the city was just a half-hour drive away. From that moment on, Marcus immersed himself entirely in the work. Our future home became his main obsession. "Catherine, my love," he would often say to me in the evenings as we sat by the fireplace in our old apartment, flipping through endless blueprints and renders. "You shouldn't clutter your beautiful head with technical routines. You're a designer. Your purpose is to contemplate pure beauty and be inspired. Let me handle all the arguments with contractors, purchasing materials, and supervising the workers. Your safety, your peace, and your comfort are my main life project. I want to build a perfect castle for you." I melted at those words, seeing them as the highest expression of masculine care and responsibility. My friends sighed with envy during our rare girls' nights out as they listened to my stories about how Marcus shielded me from any domestic or construction hardships. My husband practically lived at the construction site. With manic obsession, he personally supervised the routing of every cable, the installation of ventilation shafts, and the placement of climate control sensors and fire safety systems. The house grew before our eyes, turning into a masterpiece of modern minimalism, panoramic glazing, strict geometric lines, and a blend of raw concrete, natural stone, and expensive light wood. But the main crown jewel of Marcus's pride was the ultra-modern smart home system. Interactive touchscreen control panels adorned the walls in every room, including the walk-in wardrobe, guest areas, and the bathroom. Absolutely everything, from lighting intensity and underfloor heating to opening the curtains and humidity levels, was managed remotely through a specialized app on his smartphone. Marcus explained this complexity by claiming that sophisticated burglaries had allegedly become more frequent in our elite neighborhood, and he wanted to be able to monitor the mansion's perimeter at any given second, even while away at business meetings in another city. I unquestioningly agreed with all his arguments. After all, who in their right mind would argue with a man who protected his family's peace so fanatically? However, our ideal, glossy life together had a strange, suffocating, and deeply hidden side, which for a very long time I chalked up to the professional distortion of an artist, architect, and perfectionist. Marcus was pathologically, maniacally demanding about my appearance inside the house. It began subtly, about 6 months after our triumphant move into the new mansion. I remember that day down to the smallest detail. It was a rainy, bleak Saturday. I was incredibly exhausted after finishing a complex design project I had pulled several all-nighters for, and I decided to treat myself to a lazy day at home. I put on a cozy, old, slightly stretched-out t-shirt, wore no makeup at all, and gathered my hair into a careless, messy bun on top of my head. I just wanted to relax in my own home. When Marcus came down from his office into the living room and saw me on the sofa, his face instantly changed. In his eyes, for a split second, flashed something very close to a cold, disgusted rage, though his voice remained deceptively soft, almost coaxing. "Catherine, darling," he said quietly, stopping a few paces away from me and crossing his hands behind his back. "We live in a flawless, highly aesthetic space. This house is an extension of ourselves, of our philosophy, of our status. When you allow yourself to look like this, you destroy all the fragile harmony I worked so hard to create for you. Please respect my work and our home. Go change. Put on that silk emerald dress we bought last week. And do your makeup. It pleases me so much to see you looking perfect in these interiors." Back then, being in love and compliant, I thought of it as a quirky, if slightly exhausting whim of a creative mind. I smiled, kissed his cheek, and went to fulfill his request. But gradually, this whim escalated into a rigid, uncompromising domestic dictatorship that brooked no argument. It reached a point of complete, sinister absurdity. We could just be sitting together in the living room on a Friday night, planning to watch a movie on Netflix, but I was strictly required to wear designer high heels, an expensive silk or cocktail dress, full, meticulously blended makeup, and a flawless blowout. "You must always look as if you could be photographed for a magazine cover at any second, Catherine. A woman is her man's calling card, a reflection of his taste and his triumphs," he would often repeat, tenderly adjusting a lock of hair on my head with such frightening precision, as if he were positioning a fragile exhibit in a museum display case. If I tried to protest, complaining about being deeply exhausted, or that my feet ached from constantly wearing stilettos around the house, or simply begged for permission to be an ordinary, real, casual human being at home, Marcus would instantly withdraw into himself. He never screamed. He never stooped to cheap scenes or vulgarity. Instead, he used a far more sophisticated, psychologically destructive weapon: icy silence and deliberate ignoring. He wouldn't speak to me for 2 or 3 days, looking right through me as if I were transparent glass, completely ignoring my questions and attempts to make peace. This would continue until I, completely broken by a suffocating sense of guilt, would put the tight dress back on, apply a smooth layer of foundation, and bring the fake, rehearsed smile of a doll back to my face. Only then would he thaw again, becoming warm and tender, surrounding me with care, and whispering in my ear how perfect I was. I loved him. I was too impressionable, young, and insanely grateful to him for the material fairy tale he had built around me. So, time and time again, I made concessions, breaking my own identity. I learned to get up half an hour before him just to have time to put on full makeup, do my hair, and spray myself with expensive perfume before he even opened his eyes. I spent grueling hours in front of the mirror choosing outfits for a regular breakfast or a casual coffee together. I genuinely believed this was my small, completely affordable price to pay for a perfect marriage, for the absence of conflicts, and for a man millions of women dreamed of. how gravely mistaken I was. Even in my worst nightmare, I could never have guessed that every step I took in those uncomfortable designer shoes across our flawless parquet floor was part of someone else's cynical script, and I myself was merely an expensive prop in a twisted game. 3. Rising action and clues. The first serious, deep cracks in my illusion of a perfect marriage appeared during the 3rd year of our life together, when I fell gravely and painfully ill. It was an aggressive, brutal strain of the flu. I was shivering with a wild fever, my temperature rapidly climbing toward 40 degrees Celsius. My face was swollen, my eyes red and watering, and my nose was running non-stop. Naturally, in such a semi-conscious state, I couldn't care less about the aesthetics of the interior or Marcus's harmony of lines. I lay in our spacious bedroom in an old, washed-out flannel pajama set, surrounded by mountains of used tissues, thermometers, and nasal sprays. When Marcus returned from his office that evening and walked into the bedroom, not a single drop of sympathy, tenderness, or basic concern for my health reflected on his groomed face. He froze in the doorway, scanning the room with cold disgust. His gaze lingered for a second on the pile of tissues on the nightstand, and then moved to me, pale, disheveled, sweaty, and deeply miserable. "Good God, Catherine," he said dryly and distantly, not even making an attempt to approach the bed to simply touch my burning forehead. "Could you at least clean up this mess around you? And why are you in those awful, ugly pajamas? Your wardrobe is full of silk robes and beautiful lounge sets. You're just painful to look at right now. You are completely ruining the look of this room." "Marcus, I feel terrible. I have a horrible fever. My whole body aches," I rasped, barely holding back the tears welling up from a deep sense of hurt and shock. "Please, bring me a glass of fresh water and some fever reducer from the kitchen. It hurts to stand up." He let out a deep, theatrical sigh, expressing the ultimate degree of disappointment and irritation with his entire demeanor. "I have a crucial international call with investors starting in 15 minutes regarding a massive new project. I can't be distracted by domestic trivialities. Get the water yourself when you're able to get up." He turned sharply and walked out, shutting the door tightly behind him. Later that evening, when the fever broke slightly and I tottered out into the hallway, shaky with weakness, I discovered that Marcus had moved all his personal belongings, including his pillow, blanket, and work documents, into the guest bedroom on the first floor. He motivated this by saying that a practicing architect has no right to get sick, has a tight schedule of meetings, and is deathly afraid of catching the virus. But in his cold, empty eyes as he gathered his shirts, I read something completely different. There was a deep, physical revulsion. I had committed an unforgivable crime. I had dared to be a living, unappealing, sick, and weak human being in his flawless, dead gallery. It was then that a hollow, sticky fear of this man first sparked inside me, but the illness gradually receded. I got back on my heels, painted my lips with Marcus's favorite bright red lipstick, and he returned to our shared bed without another word, turning back into the same attentive, gallant husband as before. Our life flowed back into its usual, perfectly oiled grooves, until that fateful Tuesday that ripped my reality to shreds. It happened in mid-July. That year brought an unbearable, suffocating, and dry heat wave. Early in the morning, just as dawn was breaking, Marcus left for an important construction site in another region. A major government contract was on the line, and he warned me that he would return late at night, or perhaps stay at a local hotel until morning. I was left in the huge mansion entirely alone. Since I worked as a graphic designer remotely, my workday was completely and utterly dependent on a stable, high-speed internet connection. I was conducting difficult, grueling negotiations with a major European client, finalizing the concept of a large-scale rebranding, when at exactly 2 in the afternoon, the network throughout the house completely crashed. At first, I didn't think much of it, assuming it was a routine, momentary glitch on the provider's line. I waited 15 minutes, restarted my work laptop, tried to connect to the network via a hotspot on my phone, but the signal in our secluded pine forest was extremely weak. On the interactive smart home panel in the hallway, A warning red light flashed, signaling a total loss of connection to the central server. For me, this was an absolute disaster. In exactly 50 minutes, I was scheduled to have my final video call with the client's CEO, on which my payout for 3 months of intense work depended. If I blew the presentation, the contract would go to someone else. I frantically dialed our internet provider's customer support. A polite female operator, after a long, detailed check of the equipment on the line, informed me, "Miss Sterling, from our end, the signal is being delivered to your fiber modem in full. There are no outages on the main line. No packet loss has been detected. Apparently, the problem lies within your internal switching or routing equipment. Try manually restarting the main distribution router inside your server cabinet." Normally, Marcus handled the technical underbelly of our complex house exclusively and single-handedly. I had never meddled in these matters, not even knowing what all those numerous wires and boxes looked like. But right now, the situation was critical. The stakes were too high. I remembered that during the final stage of construction, Marcus had offhandedly mentioned that the main distribution panel, server automation blocks, and the primary network routers of the smart home were safely hidden behind a large, full-length secret mirror panel at the back of my own walk-in wardrobe. At the same time, he had strictly, under various pretexts, forbidden me from even going near that panel. "Catherine, my love, remember once and for all, you cannot go in there," he would often repeat, and a strange, overly stern steel note always crept into his voice whenever that cabinet was mentioned. "There is high voltage in there, highly complex fiber optic equipment, fragile server boards, and delicate climate control settings for the entire building. One wrong move, one accidental touch from you, and you'll fry a costly system worth tens of thousands of dollars. If something breaks, just forget about it, call me, and I'll come and configure it myself. Do not dare look inside." I tried to dial his mobile number. Marcus's phone was expectedly out of reach. At the out-of-town construction site, surrounded by concrete structures, network coverage was apparently non-existent. Time was mercilessly ticking away, the clock hands nearing the critical mark. Less than 50 minutes remained before the call. Knowing that I risked triggering a monumental, icy scandal for my husband, but having absolutely no other choice to save my job, I resolutely marched into the wardrobe. Our walk-in wardrobe was massive, completely lined with stark white cabinets outfitted with hidden LED strip lighting. At the very far end of the room, behind a large, full-length mirror in a massive frame, lay that hidden technological door. I approached it closely, dropped to my knees, and felt around with my slender fingers for a hidden mechanical latch at the very bottom of the frame, just as I had once seen Marcus do, and pushed it hard. The heavy mirrored wall swung outward with a quiet, metallic click, revealing a deep, dark utility niche filled with the steady, quiet hum of powerful cooling fans. Inside the niche, in neat, perfect rows reminiscent of a server room in a major transnational bank, hundreds of multicolored LEDs glowed and blinked. Dozens of neatly laid, labeled cables intertwined, leading upward into the building's ceiling space. I began to look around the blocks frantically, trying to spot a regular, familiar home router with antennas so I could simply pull its power cord and plug it back in to restart it. And then my gaze accidentally caught a strange, isolated section located at the very bottom of the distribution panel. It looked out of place, as if it had been mounted completely separately from the main, legitimate automation system of the smart home. Housed there was a massive, heavy, industrial-grade black hard drive connected to a separate small router devoid of any logos or identifying marks. This hidden router was blinking furiously with a bright blue LED, signaling immense continuous network activity and the transfer of massive volumes of data. I leaned in closer, my face almost touching the cold metallic circuit boards. Running from this mysterious device was a thick network cable with a neat white plastic tag taped to it. On it, in the bold, flawless, and overly familiar handwriting of Marcus, was written just one short word: Stream. My heart skipped a beat for some reason, and a sticky, cold anxiety instantly pooled in my stomach. What stream? Marcus had never, not once in all our years of marriage, mentioned that we had any broadcasting or media equipment deployed at home. Could it be some backup data replication system for his architectural firm? But why label it as a stream? And why was this block connected to a completely separate communication line that, judging by appearances, operated via an independent industrial 5G modem with an autonomous SIM card rather than our main home internet? This explained why this device continued to actively function and transmit gigabytes of information, despite the fact that the network had completely crashed throughout the rest of the mansion. Curiosity, mixed with a sudden rush of deep, intuitive dread, completely overrode my fear of my husband's wrath. I ran back into the living room, grabbed my work laptop, and frantically returned to the wardrobe. I pulled a free patch cord hanging from the strange blue router and plugged it directly into my computer's Ethernet port. I was reasonably well-versed in web interfaces and network configurations, thanks to my design work dealing with servers. I typed the standard IP address of the network gateway into the browser's address bar. A dark login window for a hidden local network instantly popped up on my laptop screen. The system required an administrator username and password. My fingers shook so violently that I kept missing the keys. I entered the standard factory defaults. Naturally, they didn't work. But I knew Marcus too well. I knew all his habits and weaknesses. He had one favorite, highly complex alphanumeric combination that, being lazy about such trivialities, he used for all his personal accounts, his old college email, and his banking apps. I typed it in, holding my breath. The monitor screen flickered for a second, turning black. The password worked. I was inside the main control panel of a hidden network video server. What opened up on my monitor in the next second caused me to completely forget how to breathe. My mind simply refused to process the incoming visual information, collapsing into a state of pure shock. The laptop screen divided into 12 neat, crisp square windows. They were real-time video feeds, in stunningly high cinematic 4K resolution, from every single, even the most intimate, room of our house. I stared at those moving squares on the screen, and the true scale of the unfolding horror slowly dawned on me with leaden, paralyzing weight. There was the living room camera, artfully hidden inside the central designer chandelier. There was the kitchen camera, providing a perfect panoramic view of the dining table, the cooking area, and the breakfast bar. There were 2 cameras in our bedroom, mounted at different angles to create a full panorama. One disguised inside the smoke detector directly above our bed, the other in a decorative wall panel opposite the mirror. There was a hidden camera right here, in the wardrobe, built into the ventilation grill near the ceiling. But the most disgusting, most sophisticated camera was located in our bathroom. It was built into the humidity sensor directly above the shower stall, providing a perfect, completely unobstructed top-down view of the entire bathtub and toilet. In the 11th square, I saw myself. I was sitting on the wardrobe floor in front of the open panel, pale as death, hair disheveled, laptop on my knees, with a wild, crazed look fixed on the screen. My hands began to shake with such force that the laptop nearly slid off my lap onto the parquet floor. My loving, caring, perfect husband Marcus was spying on me. Every single day, every minute, for all 4 years of our marriage. My first thought was blank shock and a total lack of understanding of his motives. Why? Why record terabytes of intimate, domestic video of his own legal wife? Was he really some deeply sick, latent paranoid and jealous freak? Was his jealousy of such a twisted, hidden nature? Maybe he was collecting these recordings for some secret sexual deviations of his own, or planning to blackmail me during a divorce. But the reality turned out to be a million times filthier, more cynical, colder, and more terrifying than any guesses about mundane husbandly jealousy or mental disorders. I began to frantically click through the tabs of the server's system settings, trying to figure out the architecture of this hidden network. I went into the Streaming Network Protocols tab and discovered that the data wasn't just being archived to the hard drive inside this cabinet for personal viewing. The server was configured with a permanent, encrypted, high-bandwidth VPN tunnel that ran continuously. The video feed from all 12 cameras was being streamed without a single second of delay to one specific remote IP address. Our house functioned as a 24/7, high-tech film set, a real-life Truman Show where I was the only actress entirely unaware of the script. Nearby, in the broadcast configuration file, within the metadata string, I found the account name of the recipient of this stream. There, in the client ID field, was spelled out a name that caused my heart to completely stop, freezing the blood in my veins. Eleonora_Fontaine. Eleonora. This name had haunted me like a shadow during the very first months of my relationship with Marcus. Eleonora Fontaine was an insanely wealthy, hereditary heiress to a massive construction empire, the owner of a chain of luxury five-star hotels across the country, a socialite, and a predator. And coincidentally, Marcus's ex-wife, whom he had divorced amid a horrific public scandal, lawsuits, and an absolute wreck 5 years ago, literally a year before he met me. A wild, uncontrollable whirlwind of thoughts spun in my head, stubbornly refusing to align into a coherent logical chain. Marcus was streaming our intimate life to his ex-wife? Why would a multimillionaire, an owner of factories and hotels, watch a strange woman cook breakfast, sleep, cry, or take a shower around the clock? What kind of perversion was this? I realized that the answer lay somewhere here, in the files of this hidden server. I noticed that an anonymous mailbox was linked to the network drive, through which system settings sync and weekly performance reports were sent. The password for this email was automatically saved in the browser's cache. I clicked the icon. A massive archive of emails opened before me, a correspondence between Marcus and Eleonora. It had been ongoing, uninterrupted, for all 4 years of our marriage. Every single week, they exchanged messages. I began to read the first random email I found, dated last month, and with every word I read, it became harder and harder to breathe. The air in the wardrobe seemed to turn into dense, toxic lead. The puzzle pieces fell into a picture so disgusting, cynical, cold, and terrifying that I was physically sick right there, onto the expensive parquet of our designer wardrobe, among my silk dresses. From the letters emerged a horrific, naked truth. 5 years ago, Eleonora caught Marcus in a vile, mundane affair with a young secretary right inside their shared executive office. Being a harsh, powerful, proud woman who never forgave betrayal, she didn't just throw him out of her life with a single suitcase. She completely destroyed him as a person and as a professional. She stripped him of his share in their joint construction business, annulled all his architectural contracts using her colossal influence in high places, and made him an absolute pariah in the upper echelons of the architectural community. Marcus was left with practically nothing. His former luxurious life crumbled overnight. Our suburban mansion, as it turned out from confidential financial documents in those same letters, he had built on a massive, crippling loan secured against the property of his elderly parents, desperately trying to save face before his colleagues and appear as a successful, wealthy man. But Marcus was a narcissist to his core, a sociopath incapable of accepting defeat. About a year after the divorce, he crawled back to Eleonora with a twisted, insane proposition. In his wounded, diseased pride, he declared to her that the secretary had been a fleeting physiological mistake, but Eleonora herself, as a woman, was a cold, arrogant, egotistical bitch, incapable of genuine femininity, submissiveness, and creating true domestic comfort. Marcus made a bet with her that could only have been born in the mind of a deeply sick, insecure psychopath. He promised Eleonora that he would find a woman who would be 100 times more beautiful, younger, more elegant, and most importantly, absolutely, unquestionably submissive. A woman who would idolize him, fulfill his every whim, hang on his every word, and look like a queen from a magazine cover 24 hours a day, unlike Eleonora, who preferred to walk around the house in stretched-out sweatpants, without makeup, and didn't hesitate to argue fiercely with her husband over business matters. The condition of this twisted bet was as follows. Marcus builds a house, completely rigs it with hidden high-definition cameras, and provides Eleonora with round-the-clock, uninterrupted access to this stream via a hidden encrypted server. She was to personally, in real time, witness his total triumph. If Eleonora acknowledged that his new wife was perfect, and Marcus himself was a genius of control, a great man, an alpha male, and the creator of a flawless, submissive family, she would reinstate him to the board of directors of her construction empire, restore his status as a full partner, and open up unlimited financing for him. Eleonora Fontaine, possessing an equally twisted psychology, colossal money, and the bored disposition of a cynical predator, gladly accepted this challenge. To her, it was something akin to a personal, exclusive gladiatorial show or a domestic terrarium. A living zoo where she could observe her ex-husband and his trained doll around the clock. She paid for this stream. Every month, hefty wire transfers were made to Marcus's hidden offshore account in the Cayman Islands, which allowed him to pay off the loan for our house, buy me expensive things, and maintain the illusion of his immense wealth and success to everyone around him. That was why Marcus demanded makeup, hairstyles, and evening gowns from me at home. He was creating a high-quality visual for his wealthy ex-wife. I was his product, his exhibition display, his golden ticket back into the world of big money and recognition. Every time I, exhausted, sick, or tearful, begged him to let me just be myself, to just relax, he would spiral into a panic and an icy rage because on the other end of the line, Eleonora might become disappointed in the quality of the content, decide that the doll was spoiled, and completely cut off the funding. I frantically scrolled through the emails further, my eyes blurring with tears of burning fury, shame, and deep humiliation. In one of the emails, sent 3 months ago, Eleonora wrote, "Well, Marcus, your domestic pet is looking a bit pale today. What is that dreary gray robe she's wearing around the kitchen? She's boring to look at. If she keeps letting herself go and turning into a regular housewife, I will doubt your talents as a great trainer and completely kill the deal on the new hotel in Miami. Make sure it stays interesting for me to look into this fishbowl. Put her in something decent." And Marcus replied to her literally an hour later. "Don't worry, dearest Eli. It was a momentary weakness. She had a tough day freelancing. I've already had a corrective chat with her. Tomorrow, she'll put on that revealing red lingerie you picked out from the catalog and arrange a romantic candlelit dinner for me. Everything will be top tier. You'll love the camera angle. Is the Miami contract still on? Awaiting confirmation from your lawyers." I sat on the floor of the wardrobe, holding my head in my hands, as a quiet, suffocating, raspy groan escaped my chest. My entire life, all my genuine, pure feelings for this man, our nights in the bedroom, my morning confessions of love, my moments of weakness, tears, fears, all of it was just cheap, or rather, very expensive content, to entertain a bored, cynical, wealthy bitch and my manipulative husband. I was an object, a trophy, an actress being filmed by a hidden camera in her own bathroom without her knowledge or consent. I thought this was the peak of horror I could experience on this terrible day. But then, the screen of my laptop connected to the server abruptly flickered. In the lower right corner of the control panel, a system notification popped up that caused the hairs on the back of my neck to stand up in primal, paralyzing terror. User Eleonora_F connected to camera cam_04 wardrobe. Status active. Session time 0:01. She had connected right now. Through the hidden lens disguised in the ventilation grill directly above my curly head, Eleonora Fontaine was sitting in front of her monitor in her luxury penthouse on the other side of the city at this very second, and she saw me. She saw my open laptop, my tears, the open distribution panel, and the fact that I had just uncovered their filthy, twisted secret completely, down to the smallest detail. 4. The climax. The very second the meaning of that system notification hit my consciousness, that the hidden lens above my head was broadcasting my every move live in that exact moment, a vital safety fuse seemed to blow inside me. The fear that had paralyzed my limbs until that point vanished instantly, replaced by a freezing, absolute, crystal-clear fury. It was the rage of a cornered animal that had been kept in a cage for too long for amusement and a cynical bet. I realized one key thing. If I succumbed to panic now, screamed, started smashing the equipment with a hammer, or simply packed my bags in tears and ran out of the house, I would lose this war. Marcus had extensive connections. Eleonora had colossal millions, the country's best lawyers, and immense power. They could easily and remotely wipe this server, claim I had lost my mind out of jealousy, fabricate a case of mental instability against me, or simply hush up the story by bribing low-level county police officials. I needed irrefutable cast-iron evidence that could not be destroyed, erased from servers, or contested in any court of law in the world. I slowly, very calmly, raised my head and looked directly at the ventilation grill under the ceiling, where a tiny, barely noticeable glint of a high-tech lens could be discerned behind the thin metal slats. I straightened my spine, confidently wiped the tears from my face with the sleeve of my t-shirt, and spoke in a calm, chilling, very distinct voice, staring straight into the hidden camera. I hope you're enjoying this episode, Eleonora, because it's the series finale. You and Marcus will be watching the next season of your reality show from the defendant's dock in federal court. The show is over. I didn't turn off the hidden router or cut the wires. I left the system running as normal so that they wouldn't suspect anything on the other end too early and attempt to remotely lock out my access or wipe the files. Frantically, but with absolute cold precision, I pulled out my smartphone. I began methodically photographing the laptop screen, the open system logs, the configuration files with Eleonora's IP address hard-coded, her personal client ID, the entire detailed history of their vile correspondence spanning 4 years of my marriage. I took screenshot after screenshot, immediately uploading them to my personal encrypted cloud storage with two-factor authentication, to which no one but me had access. Then, I inserted my high-capacity work flash drive into the laptop and completely copied the entire archive of emails, server database dumps, configuration files, and system connection logs. Having finished with the digital evidence, I carefully closed the secret mirror panel, returning it to its former, innocent, monolithic appearance so that Marcus wouldn't notice anything from the doorstep if he happened to return early, and walked through the house. Now I knew exactly what to look for. Referencing the list of network ports on the server, I approached each hidden device in the mansion. I took detailed photos of the smoke detector in our bedroom at an angle that made the hidden lens clearly visible inside it. I documented the humidity sensor in the bathroom, the chandelier in the living room, the hidden eyelet in the kitchen cabinet above the stove. I compiled a complete, detailed visual catalog of their heinous crime. After that, I went up to the bedroom, took a small duffel bag, and threw in my documents, passport, marriage certificate, work hard drives, and the bare minimum of necessary clothing. I intentionally left all the expensive designer dresses, stiletto heels, and jewelry that Marcus had bought for me with such pompous flair hanging in the closet. Those were not gifts from a loving husband. That was my working wardrobe, for which I had paid with my freedom and soul for 4 years. I went down to the underground garage, got into my car, started the engine, and drove at full speed straight to our county's Central Police headquarters. The clock showed 4 in the afternoon. A thunderstorm was rolling in. At the station, I had to wait for about half an hour until I was finally seen by a regular detective, a man of about 45 with a tired, perceptive face and deep wrinkles around his eyes named Clark. When I sat across from him in his stuffy office and began to hurriedly but thoroughly tell my story, he initially looked at me with a mild, practiced skepticism, clearly mistaking me for yet another hysterical wife experiencing paranoia over her husband's potential infidelity. "Miss Sterling, you are claiming that your husband installed security cameras in the house?" Detective Clark interrupted me gently and slightly dismissively, spinning a pen in his hands. "But you must understand, as the owner and architect of the building, it is within his legal rights." "Detective Clark, you haven't listened to me." I interrupted him coldly and sharply, shutting down any attempts to write it off as a marital drama. I spun my laptop around, opened the saved encrypted files, and pushed the screen close to his face. "He didn't just install cameras for security. He is broadcasting my private life, including moments when I am completely unclothed in the shower, wardrobe, and bed, to third parties for commercial gain as part of an established wager. Look at these server logs. Look at this correspondence with his ex-wife, Eleonora Fontaine. Detective Clark reluctantly leaned toward the screen. As his eyes scanned the lines of Marcus and Eleonora's emails, his face rapidly changed color, from a pale gray to a deep crimson. His jaw literally clenched with a dull thud of human and professional anger. He read the lines where Marcus's ex-wife ordered the brand and color of my underwear for the week, under the direct threat of immediately severing major business contracts and cutting off funding for our house. "Good God," Detective Clark muttered quietly through his teeth, slowly raising his eyes to meet mine. There was no longer a single trace of condescension or skepticism left in them. A pure, professional investigator's fury burned there. "This isn't just a domestic dispute, Miss Sterling. This is a severe criminal offense. Video voyeurism on a massive scale, illegal manufacturing, possession, and transmission of intimate materials without the consent of an adult, committed by a group of persons by prior conspiracy, tied with commercial bribery and blackmail. This is pure federal criminal territory." Detective Clark turned out to be a true, honest professional. He immediately understood that they could not afford to waste a single second. If Marcus returned home early, or if Eleonora Fontaine had managed to warn him by phone, since she saw through the wardrobe camera that I had breached the server, they would instantly destroy all the hard drives and wipe the logs. Clark immediately got in touch directly with the duty district attorney and a state judge. Thanks to the ironclad, irrefutable digital evidence I had gathered, a search warrant for our suburban mansion and an immediate arrest warrant for Marcus Sterling were drafted, signed, and stamped with official seals within a record 2 hours. At around 11 in the evening, we returned to my house. The rain was pouring down. I sat in the passenger seat of an unmarked civilian-style police vehicle next to a grim Clark. Behind us, moving silently with their emergency lights and sirens completely blacked out, were 2 more vehicles carrying a tactical team and forensic experts. We carefully parked in the deep shadow of the sprawling pine trees along the driveway, plunging the cars into darkness. We waited for Marcus to arrive. At 23:45, the bright, piercing xenon headlights of his massive SUV cut through the nocturnal darkness and the wall of rain. Marcus pulled confidently into the driveway and parked right by the front porch. I watched through the rain-streaked glass as he climbed out of the vehicle. He looked absolutely magnificent as always, an expensive Italian suit, flawless hair, with a smug, satisfied, and relaxed smile of a successful man playing on his face. It seemed his out-of-town meeting had gone brilliantly, and he was looking forward to telling me, and by extension, his invisible wealthy viewer, about his latest career triumph. He was whistling a popular jazz tune, leisurely pulling his keys out of his trousers pocket. Marcus unlocked the front door, stepped across the threshold, turned on the bright lights in the hallway, and at that exact moment, Detective Clark barked a sharp command into his radio. The police cruisers instantly blocked his SUV in the driveway with a screech of tires. The car doors flew open, and armed officers led by Clark quickly, professionally, and without unnecessary noise entered the house. I walked behind them into the depths of the living room, tightly holding my laptop like the ultimate weapon of my life. Marcus stood frozen in the middle of our luxurious living room of concrete and glass. A look of utmost bewilderment registered on his face, quickly morphing into arrogant indignation. He raised his hands, glaring contemptuously at the armed officers in uniform who had entered. "What the hell is going on here? Catherine, who are these people?" His voice boomed with authority, loud. He tried to channel his usual master of the universe persona to intimidate the police. "Officer, you must have the wrong address. This is private gated property. Leave my house immediately and take my wife outside, or tomorrow you'll all be looking for new jobs in the cheapest backwater town. Do you know who I am?" Detective Clark took a confident step forward, pulling a folded piece of paper bearing official seals from the inside pocket of his jacket. "Marcus Sterling? I'm Detective Clark, County Police Department. You are under arrest under suspicion of gross violation of privacy, illegal manufacturing, possession, and broadcasting of hidden intimate video without the victim's consent. Here is the official warrant for your immediate arrest and a search of these premises. Weapons on the floor, hands behind your head." Marcus turned deathly pale for a moment, his breath catching, but his immense narcissistic confidence in his own invulnerability was too strong. He quickly composed himself, forced a brief, fake, dismissive chuckle, and looked at me with deep, theatrical pity, as if I were insane. "Catherine, my God, darling, you staged this entire insane circus just because I installed an advanced security camera system in the house? Officer, listen to me. My wife has been mentally unstable lately. She is suffering from severe, prolonged depression due to a creative crisis and wild paranoia stemming from jealousy. These cameras are a standard, conventional smart home security and perimeter system installed solely for her own safety while I am away on business trips. I am taking care of her. I have all the receipts for the equipment." "Shut up, Marcus. Just close your filthy mouth," I said quietly, but with such a crushing, freezing power in my voice that he genuinely flinched and stepped back for the first time. I took 2 steps forward and turned the laptop screen toward his face, where the open control panel of his hidden server and Eleonora's connection logs glowed a bright blue. "I know about Eleonora Fontaine. I know about your sick wager. I've read your entire correspondence from the very first to the very last word across the 4 years of our marriage. I know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars that bitch paid you for this stream every single month, buying you contracts in Miami. And I know that right now, your wealthy ex-wife is watching through the hidden camera in the wardrobe as her perfect man and genius of control turns into a common, pathetic criminal." A dead, ringing, suffocating silence fell over the room. It felt as though every molecule of oxygen had been sucked out of our massive living room in a single instant. A look of primal, animal, existential horror, the likes of which I had never seen in any living creature, manifested on Marcus's groomed face. His flawless facade, his expensive aristocratic mask that he had constructed and polished for years in front of the mirror, crumbled in a single second, exposing the rotten, cowardly, and utterly terrified core of a sociopath. His lips trembled faintly. He opened his mouth repeatedly, trying to force out some sort of justification, but only a pathetic, raspy, interrupted wheeze escaped his constricted throat. His wild gaze darted around the room, landing helplessly against the stony faces of the police officers. At that moment, 2 forensic experts wearing gloves descended from the 2nd floor into the living room. One of them held a specialized equipment toolkit. "Detective Clark, we have located, documented, and dismantled the first 3 hidden miniature cameras, inside the designer living room chandelier, in the kitchen ventilation grill, and in the bedroom above the bed. All devices are in active mode, and we're continuously transmitting encrypted data to an external network via a hidden modem." When the expert carefully laid out a tiny, high-tech lens with a microphone on the glass coffee table in front of the sofa, extracted from our bedroom's smoke detector, the size of a regular shirt button, the very bedroom where we had slept, made love, and built plans for 4 years, Marcus simply collapsed. His knees buckled, his face turned the color of earth, and he fell heavily, like a sack, onto the sofa, burying his face in his trembling hands. The police officers roughly, without unnecessary ceremony or sentimentality, lifted him up and forced his hands behind his back. The sharp, dry, metallic clicking sound of handcuffs locking echoed through the quiet living room. Marcus no longer screamed, threatened with his connections, mentioned lawyers, or tried to appear in control. He was completely, utterly broken. As he was led roughly toward the exit into the pouring rain, he turned and threw a single look over his shoulder at me. There was not a shred of remorse, a single drop of regret, or any remnants of past love in that gaze. A fierce, concentrated, helpless, and black hatred of a caught criminal burned there. The following morning, just as dawn broke, a state police tactical team executed a matching search and arrest warrant, authorized by a federal prosecutor, raiding Eleonora Fontaine's luxurious 3-story penthouse in the heart of the capital. As my lawyers later detailed to me, it proved to be an equally cataclysmic downfall for her. Inside her private, encrypted executive study, Forensics uncovered a massive, dedicated server terminal loaded with specialized software where the entire multi-year video archive of hidden recordings from my home was being systematically duplicated, cataloged, and meticulously preserved. She was arrested right there in her expensive silk robe, with a glass of vintage wine in her hand as an accomplice, the primary client, mastermind, and sponsor of this vile, twisted criminal conspiracy against human dignity. 5. Outro and CTA. The judicial process dragged on for nearly 11 agonizing months, becoming one of the most high-profile, scandalous, and media-frenzied criminal cases in the state's history. Eleonora Fontaine's high-priced defense attorneys, the nation's finest, most cynical lawyers, fully aware that an acquittal was fundamentally impossible given such direct digital evidence and servers, tried absolutely everything to save her name and reputation from total ruin. They approached my legal team 3 times, mounting a true psychological assault. I was offered colossal, staggering sums of money that an ordinary person wouldn't earn in several lifetimes. Initially, it was $1 million. The figure then climbed to 3, and finally, shortly before the final court hearing, her lead defense attorneys officially offered me $7 million in cash to a hidden account in exchange for completely withdrawing my civil suit, signing a lifetime non-disclosure agreement, NDA, and having the case quietly dismissed within a settlement without any exposure to the press and court archives. Many of my distant relatives and a few old acquaintances, learning through the grapevine that I was hesitating and rejecting the offer, literally pointed at their temples, considering me insane. "Catherine, you've completely lost your mind over your pride," a former friend screamed into the phone. "Take the $7 million, you fool! You will secure a carefree life for yourself, your future children, and your grandchildren anywhere in the world until old age. Why do you need this public filth, these courts, these write-ups in the newspapers? You're being dragged through the mud in the tabloids yourself. Be smarter, take her money, and erase this like a bad dream." But I completely, fiercely, and rigidly refused any out-of-court settlements and checks. I didn't want to take their dirty money in exchange for my slave-like silence. I didn't want them to walk away unscathed, buying my freedom a second time. I wanted their names to be publicly, officially, and forever dragged through the mud before the eyes of the entire country. I wanted the world to know exactly who the brilliant and magnificent architect Marcus Sterling and the respected, noble businesswoman Eleonora Fontaine truly were. I wanted them to pay a terrifying price that cannot be measured by checks, stocks, and bank wires, and the state court delivered justice to them in full. Marcus Sterling was found guilty on every single count of the criminal indictment without exception. The elderly judge, making no effort to hide his deep human disgust toward the defendant sitting in the courtroom cage, sentenced him to 4 years of real prison time in a maximum security penitentiary without the slightest right to parole during the first half of his term. His brilliant career as an architect is destroyed once and for all. His name has been shamefully expunged from all international professional associations and registries. All his accounts and assets have been fully seized to cover the colossal court fees, and he has been officially declared entirely bankrupt. He will emerge from prison a destitute, useless 40-year-old felon with a criminal record and absolutely no future. Eleonora Fontaine, thanks to her money, government connections, and the fact that she did not personally mount the cameras into the walls, managed to escape real prison bars and detention cells. However, the court sentenced her to 2 years of probation, 500 hours of mandatory community service, and the payment of an unprecedented, record-setting moral damage and privacy violation compensation to me in the amount of $5 million. But the most devastating, crushing blow for her was far from that money. Against the backdrop of the horrific public scandal, broadcasts from the courtroom, and endless media features, the shares of her family's construction empire plummeted by a record 35% in just 2 weeks. The company's board of directors, scrambling to save the remnants of their business and international contracts, forcibly, through emergency protocols, shamefully ousted Eleonora Fontaine from any leadership role in the family enterprise forever, entirely stripping her of voting rights and management. Her reputation in high society was scorched to the ground, turning into radioactive ash. People whose opinions she valued more than anything else in the world publicly stopped greeting her or welcoming her into their homes. I collected those court-awarded $5 million down to the last cent. I filed for divorce, instantly reclaimed my maiden name, and left that cursed state forever without looking back. I bought a small, incredibly cozy wooden house right on the coast of a roaring ocean, on the opposite end of the country. In this house, there are absolutely no smart systems, no control panels, and no smart home gadgets. Just ordinary, reliable mechanical locks, simple button light switches, and no hidden utility niches or secret panels. More than a year has passed since the sentencing, but I still dutifully attend therapy sessions with an experienced psychologist twice a week. The first 6 months after the trial were a living, unceasing psychological hell for me. I was physically incapable of sleeping at night without the room's bright lights turned on at full power. Every single time I walked into a hotel room on a business trip, a public restroom, a restaurant, or simply a friend's apartment, I would spiral into a suffocating panic attack. I would pull out my phone, turn on the flashlight, and frantically, until my eyes blurred, inspect every ventilation grill, every sensor, every outlet, baseboard, and wallpaper texture for the presence of hidden microscopic lenses. This deep psychological trauma will remain with me for a very long time, and perhaps for the rest of my life. But now, thanks to therapy and time, it is finally getting easier. Slowly, piece by piece, I am learning to trust people and live anew. And you know what? Now, when I'm at home, I walk around exclusively in my oldest, most stretched-out, oversized men's hoodies that are 3 sizes too big, wearing ridiculous warm woolen socks. I completely gave up makeup and don't wear any for weeks if I sincerely don't want to, and I tie my hair into the most chaotic, messy bun on the top of my head. And when I look at myself in the hallway mirror in such a natural state, I no longer feel shame or anxiety over a ruined interior aesthetic. I feel truly alive, free, clean, and protected. Because this vile play has ended forever, the props are burned, and there isn't a single secret viewer left in the audience. This story is just one of many where justice prevails. If you want more spine-chilling dramas, subscribe to our channel and become part of the Storytime drama community. Leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!